Praise the Lord, my beautiful blessed souls. Back with another word, bruised and not broken. I know I've been gone about a day or two. I actually had some things going on in my life. OMG. I might tell you about it. Some good, some not so good. We'll see how this goes. But we are in 1 Samuel chapter 31. We are ending the 1 Samuel. We're about to get into 2nd. And August 10th says impatience, and August 11th says negativity. I believe we left off at the 9th. So I'm going to read these and we're going to get into it and we're going to see how it works with this message. And I myself have been going through some things, patience and other things, and with the things that's going on in my life, which I may or may not disclose. Some are kind of good and some are not so good. I've had, some news that wasn't all that great. But August 10th said impatience. What common mistake might I make in handling my problems? One common mistake is giving in to impatience. We may trust that God will handle the situation, but when the answer seems slow in coming, you may decide that God needs a bit of help. Now, sometimes we do this. I know we have, because I have. Sarah knew that she was to have a child, but God waited 25 years to make this promise come true. Could you imagine that? In the meantime, Sarah took matters into her own hands, which a lot of times we do, and it created a mess, of course. When we trust God, we must trust Him completely, even if it means having to wait. Now, this has been a lot with this. And a lot in the Bible, we see them waiting for so long, but we're going to get into it. Genesis 16, 1 through 2. God's response to this is Sarah, Abraham's wife, had no children, so Sarah took her servant, an Egyptian woman named Hagar, and gave her to Abram so he could bear him children. Now remember, that was Ishmael, and remember a lot went on with that, and those are the Muslims that are over there now that are fighting against Isaac's children, I believe, which are the promised child. Remember, Isaac was the promised child, Ishmael was the child they had on their own. So this is why they're warring, because Ishmael, although he was the firstborn, he still did not get the full firstborn blessing because he was not the child that God gave them. This was the child that they went out and did this thing themselves. So Habakkuk 2 and 3, these things I plan won't happen right away. Slowly, steadily, surely the time approaches when the vision will be fulfilled. If it seems slow, wait patiently for it. It will surely take place and it will not be delayed. So this is another thing. And so Esau and Jacob, them and their children, their family. We got to remember all of this stuff. These are, family members. And this is what we see, the different splices over there of the religions, the different splices of, the different things all around the world. And when we look at these things, it makes a lot of sense. So then negativity, August 11th, it says, how can I keep my problems from giving me a bad attitude? Because a lot of times we get angry, we get bitter with ourselves, our heart becomes callous and hard. It depends on what is going on, and please understand, I know in certain situations, this is going to happen, and it's not going to be said, oh, well, we shouldn't do a lot of things, but in all actuality, not to excuse it. In some situations where you lose children, when certain things arise, we can't sit here and tell people that they can't be upset and they can't be, you know what I'm saying? So we got to be careful with these situations and what is going on, because everyone has a right to be angry and upset, but God says we shouldn't be angry, but you sin not. So when we are focused on our problem, we can't see the bigger picture of what God might be doing. The Israelites certainly had reason to be afraid, but they forgot that God had already promised to give them the land. Their fear made them negative, as hard as it is to keep your problems in God's perspective. So we won't become negative and give up. So this is what we're supposed to be doing. We know this is not an easy task. We're not even going to sit here and make it seem like it is, because a lot of times we go through things and it's not to excuse it. It's not to say this is something we should be doing. But we know as human, and God knows, and He understands, and He meets us right where we are. Now, Numbers 13, 25 to 28. After exploring the land for 40 days, the men reported to the whole community, what they had seen and showed them the fruit that they had taken from the land. This is the report. Remember to Moses, we arrived in the land you sent us to see, and it is indeed magnificent country. But the people living there are powerful, and the cities and the towns are fortified, and they are very large. We also saw the descendants of Anak, remember the Anunnakis, who are living there. And a lot of them were tall people. Remember, those are the giants. I believe those are the descendants, I believe, of Goliath. Yeah. Caleb tried to encourage the people as they stood before Moses. Let's go at once to take the land. He said, we can certainly conquer it. This was Numbers 13 and 30. So we can get either one of two ways with that. We can have, we are not going to make it, or we can have, it's taking very long. I mean, and trying to wait and then wait with a good attitude, you know, because sometimes it does get difficult. But let's get into this, because this has a lot to do with Saul and David and what we're doing. And even in our own lives, we will see things that happen this way, and we can kind of put it, you know, wherever. But we're just going to briefly, we're going to read it, and we're going to go over it, and we're just going to analyze it in our own lives, and, you know, look at where we can, our strengths and our weaknesses, how we can work better, well, and work better with fixing these areas that we're not so good in waiting at, because I know sometimes that is not an easy task. So, 1 Samuel chapter 31. Now the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons. Remember this. And the Philistines struck down Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchi-Shua, the sons of Saul. Now remember, God had already told them this. Remember, Jonathan and the sons got caught up. This was not even something that they themselves did. They didn't sin against God, but because their father did, this was the outcome of their lives. So a lot of people say, oh, you know, you get battles, you get this because you sin. Not all the time. As we can see right here, Jonathan did nothing wrong, but he still died because of what his father did. And in our own lives, we have to pay attention to what goes on in our family bloodlines. And sometimes the things we're going through has nothing to do with us. It may have to do with our family, our parents, or whatever else is there. This is where the generational stuff come in and all this other stuff, but we have to pay attention. So anyway, and the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchi-Shua, the sons of Saul. The battle pressed hard against Saul, and the archers found him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and mistreat me. Talking about they were going to come kill him, you know, torture him, talking about the Philistines. But his armor bearer would not, for he greatly feared. And therefore Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell upon his sword and died with him. Thus Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor bearer, and all his men on the same day together. And when the men of Israel who were on the other side of the valley and those beyond the Jordan saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their cities and fled. And the Philistines came and lived in them, meaning in the cities. That's sad. That's, you know. And they didn't even fight. They knew. And these, we're going to get into it, because some battles we already know is not ours or not winnable because of God already told him. So we're going to just pay attention to this. Now, the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. So they cut off their heads and stripped off their armor and sent messages throughout all the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to the house of their idols and to the people. So they put his armor in the temple of Asheroth. Remember, those are their gods that they worship. And they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. But when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the body of his sons from the wall of Bethshan. And it came to Jabesh and burned them there. And they took their bodies and bones, and they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh, and they fasted 7 days. So now We're going to take a look at what is going on because I wanted to know the symbolism of some of these things. We're going to get into that in a minute. Now, as with most kings at the time, Saul's entire reign has been marked by war. Remember, he's the first one. The first recorded was against the Amorites, who had besieged Jabesh Gilead in 1 Samuel 11. His most frequent opponents was the Philistines. This is the ones he's been, he's now at the end, he faces the Philistines again. He has banished his greatest warrior, which was David. That was a battle he should have had. He has seen the Philistines' army before him and knows the strength of his men that will fall. That God has abandoned him, which he already knows, and he knows that he and his sons will die in battle because God already told him that, and yet he still shows up leading his army in a battle that they cannot win. Now, when we know certain things I don't understand, I guess he just still wants to go out in the blaze of glory. Sometimes we need to know when to hold and when to fold, and when God has already told you something I don't even understand, folks still get out there and try to do their thing. So, the description of Sarah's final battle with the Philistines is brief. The massive Philistine forces attack Israel's positions near Mount Gilboa. The Israelites are overwhelmed while attempting to flee to the mountain or up the mountain. Saul's sons Jonathan and Abinadab and Malachi Shua are killed, and Saul is critically wounded by the Philistine archers. Now, Saul realizes his time has come, finally, his pride and ego, but he doesn't want the Philistines to end his life. Now, they would humiliate him, of course, and he orders his armor bearer to kill him. Like David, so many of them before him, the man refuses. He will not kill his king, so Saul falls on his own sword, killing himself. After the king's suicide, his armor bearer follows suit of Saul's example, so he falls on his sword. And the people of Israel who live nearby, including to the east side of the Jordan, hear the news and flee from their homes. The Philistines take the cities without a fight, meaning because they just ran away and they left. So the Philistines return to Mount Gilboa the next day to plunder their bodies. They discover the corpses of King Saul and his sons. They behead Saul's body, strip off his armor, and then they send messages throughout all the Philistine kingdom and to the temples of their gods with the good news. King Saul is dead and the Israelites are defeated. Now, for their, gods or whatever that is, a win. The Philistines deliver Saul's armor as a trophy to the temple of their goddess Ashtaroth. That's why we look at these god symbols and all the stuff that we always talk about. This is what this is. They fasten his headless body and those of his sons to the wall in the public square at the nearby Bethshan. The people of the Israelites' town, Jabesh Gilead, hear what the Philistines have done. They remember Saul's efforts on their behalf. Right. So shortly after Saul had become king, the Ammonites had threatened to make all of them slaves if they couldn't find a champion. Remember this. This is how the enslavement, all of this goes on. Saul heard and gathered an army to fight the Amorites and saved Jabesh Gilead. So the men of Jabesh Gilead returned the favor. They barely sneak into Bethshan at night and remove the bodies. Back in Jabesh, they burned the remains of Saul and his sons, and they buried their bones under the tamarisk tree. So Israel's defeat and Saul's death are God's judgment for Saul's disobedience. This has nothing to do with the Israelites. It has nothing to do with, the sons. It's because of him. So we got to pay attention to what it is that we're doing, because it can have a lot of devastation. And when we look at our lives and we look at the devastation that goes on, and I tell people everybody plays a part because we have, whether we know it or not. After the first violation, God declared Saul's descendants will not keep the throne. After the second, that not even his son will be king. So that was another thing. And after David killed Goliath, Saul realized God had chosen David to succeed him. Despite Saul's best efforts, he couldn't kill David, and David refused to kill him. So now, with the deaths of Saul and the three sons, David's path to the throne is clear. David will mourn his king, his best friend, and then he will take the crown. So it was all of this for him to get to. When first written the books we are now called 1st and 2nd Samuel were part of a single text, they were separated to make them into manageable volumes. Okay, so because we're going to get into 2nd Samuel, because this is the last book of 1st Samuel, the last chapter. So we're going to move into 2nd Samuel chapter 1, but we're not there yet. So anyway, let's get on into it. If we're paying attention, a lot has happened. A lot is happening throughout this whole thing. So now we're going to break it down now. Let me see. So I had a lot of questions for this one as well, and I'm going to get to them. Now, in the foregoing chapter, we had David conquering, more than a conqueror. In this chapter, we have Saul conquered and worse, and now he's captive. Providence ordered in that both these things should be doing just at the same time. The very same day, perhaps, that David was triumphant over the Amalekites, with the Philistines triumphant over Saul. So remember, on one side, this is going well, and on the other side, this is going well. So Saul one is set over against the other, and the men may see what comes of trusting in God and what comes of forsaking in him. This is the difference between the two. We left Saul ready to engage the Philistines with a shaking hand and an aching heart, having had his doom read to him from hell, meaning from Samuel, the one he raised up, which he would not regard when it was read him from heaven. Now let us now see what becomes of him. His army is routed, his 3 sons slain, himself wounded, and slain by his own hand. The death is his armor bearer and all his men. His country possessed by the Philistines, his camp plundered, and his dead body deserted. His fall triumphed in, his body publicly exposed, and with difficulty rescued by the men of Jabesh Gilead. Thus fell the men that was rejected of God. So when we pay attention to what is going on, we see one is favored and one is not. So now we're going to look at this and how, this is heavy. It is tragic. It's prophetic and it's necessary. Now, this is the moment where Saul's long decline, meaning fighting, reaches its final consequence. And the kingdom shifts fully towards David. So below, we're going to just pay attention and take away and look at all of it, how it breaks down. Saul dies not because the Philistines were strong. Remember that. But it's because of his disobedience, matured rebellion, and it ripened, and God's patience reached its limit. So God will allow things to go on for a time, as we already knew, and then he will put a stop to it. So his death clears the way for David's rise. Why? Because sometimes people will not let go, and their pride and ego won't let them stop battling you until death comes. This is the whole sad point of that. Now, they don't see it. I don't know why. It's their pride and ego, usually, because even in this situation, he was already told he wasn't going to win, but he still took all these other people out to fight and get killed along with him. Instead of just, walking away and being like repenting and going and asking God, well, what can he do now or whatever, something different from what he was doing. He was still in rebellion. He didn't care about what God had told him. He didn't care. He was on his own, doing his own thing. And when we look at ourselves, when we look at our children, when we look at ourselves as children, whatever, and children of God, children of natural, we see ourselves in rebellion. And we see the consequences of that, and it can look like anywhere from you being a child, you being disrespectful, and your parent putting you out. You see what I'm saying? It can look in different ways. So pay attention. Now, this chapter teaches when a leader refuses correction, their fall becomes inevitable, and their fall becomes the rise of the one God has chosen. Now, when we pay attention to even our lives, even in our relationships, whether it's our bosses, whether it's our spouses, whether it's our family and friends, and we look and pay attention to the dynamics of the relationships and how they work out. This would be refusing to repent, refusing to make amends, refuses, to sit down, come to the table, to obey, to do something better than what we're doing, to continue in conflict, to continue in pride and ego, to continue in rebellion, to continue in conflict and strife. This is what in dysfunction, this is what this can look like. And no matter what someone is telling you, you still won't listen and you still won't heed to what it is they're trying to tell you. And a lot of times other people will tell you things. God will have other people, he'll tell you himself, just like he did with this. But folks won't listen, and it won't happen until the total devastation hits. Now, chapter overview. The Philistines fight Israel at Mount Gilboa. Israel's army collapses. Saul plus his sons, meaning including Jonathan, which was friends with David, are killed. Saul is wounded by archers. Saul kills himself to avoid capture. The Philistines mutilate his body and display it publicly, which is a disgrace. And the men of Jabesh Gilead retrieve his body and bury him honorably. This is at the end of the Saul's dynasty. So this is how his reign ended. And how you begin, and the beginning, middle, and end says everything, because in the beginning of things, everything is wonderful, peachy keen. The middle and the end, I tell people, is always a doozy, and it depends on how that works out. So now, the consequence of disobedience. Saul's death is spiritual, is not military. Why? Saul died not because, he couldn't fight them and win, it was because he disobeyed God, and because that God rejected him and didn't allow him to do anything else. So he rejected God, he disobeyed repeatedly, meaning did his own thing, didn't listen, had his pride and ego in the way, wanted to do it his way. He consulted a medium, meaning he went after, the diviners. He attacked God's chosen. Remember, he was attacking David. Remember, he had killed off the priest. He refused to repent, meaning he refused to say he was sorry. He refused to change from his wicked ways. And this is when you see this. When people's heart, he hardened his heart. Instead of softening it, he continued to harden it. So the Philistines were simply the instrument that God used to have his correction or have his whatever. It's the consequences of his own actions. Now, we can see this in families. We can see this in spouses. That's the destruction of a marriage. When folks is doing what they want to do. Rebellion in children, rebellion in themselves as a child, whatever these things may look like. Because we can see these things in so many different ways at this point, when we look at it from a job standpoint, when we look at it from our spouses, from our children, when we look at it from whatever it is, whether it's business, because I tell people, if you can't be in a marriage and you be faithful, you can't be in business and be faithful. Why? You can't have healthy relationships. Why? Because trust in all of these things, if you look up the interview, questions, is the same stuff that you would have if you're going to date, marry, open businesses. Is the same thing. Why? Because they want to see if you're reliable. Can they trust you? Are you dependable? How you work under pressure, all these different things. So this is what this looks like. And so when we look at our lives, we have to even when it comes to spouses, even when it comes to friends and family, we have to look at it from this standpoint, because a lot of times, because we're close to people, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's the best pick, the best fit. It does not mean that. So God's silence in chapter 20 becomes judgment in chapter 31. When God stops speaking, the next thing that happens is consequences. So this is what happened. God stopped dealing with him. He stopped speaking to him. And you can see that with a lot of relationships where people fall out and they stop speaking. This is a sign. Why? Because was a breakdown. Somewhere something went wrong here. And the thing is, a lot of times people know. They just won't let their pride and ego be honest about the situation. This is the sad part about it. Have the conversation, be honest. Let's not lie. Let's not play these little games, act like you don't know, you're oblivious. When you know exactly what happened, you know where the breakdown, you know your part you played, you know the part that the other person played, and this is what it is. And be honest about it. But a lot of times you'll find folks want to act like the elephant in the room, just not sitting there. You can clearly see it, but you act like it is not there. I'm not the elephant in the room person. I am not. We're going to have, you play with me, try to handle me like I'm slow and stupid, and then I'm going to sit there and I'm going to show you slow and stupid, because I don't have time to play with you. When people think that they outsmarted you or did something, let them think that. On your inside what really went on. Let them think. Sometimes you got to play the role of the fool to the fool who think they fooling you. I tell people this all the time. When you handle me like I'm slow, I'm beneath you, I'm stupid, I promise you're going to get the side of me that you're going to understand and know for yourself that is simply not the case. But I let people think what they want to think. I digress. And I see how they treat me and how they treat me accordingly, and I treat them accordingly. That's it. So, Saul's fall is the fulfillment of Samuel's prophecy. Now, Samuel told him Israel will lose. Samuel told him Saul would die. Saul's sons would die. David will rise. This chapter fully fulfills every word. This was so prophetic. And remember, Samuel told him this from way back when. So he already knew this. It's not that he didn't know it. And a lot of times people know stuff and they still don't care. They still want what they want and want to pursue, want to do this. Just leave it alone. You see what I'm saying? But it's all about their self. It's all about their own, pride and ego. It's all about what they want and how they want to look and how they want to feel in front of people, or if they want to have control or manipulate. No. Now, the mental layer, the collapse. So they just did all of this fighting, all of this battle, all of this time, so did all this to end up still right where God told him he was going to be. God already told you was not going to have the throne. All you did was kill off all these extra people, including your sons, and did all this song and dance when you could have stopped this a long time ago. How many situations have you had like that in your life where things just got out of hand and you could have stopped it a long time ago? Say you're wrong, admit you're wrong, change your behavior, ask forgiveness, and move on. That's it. It's too much to swallow, honey. Folks, with that pill, be too hard to swallow. It be the littlest pill, but it seems like it's huge. They can't swallow it. Mental layer, the collapse of a tormented mind. And everyone can be wrong about any and everything. We are human. We are flawed. No one's perfect. So people can be wrong about a lot of things, whether they know it or not. So Saul's mental state, and just acknowledging it, admitting to it, and learning from it and moving on. That's it. That's all you got. It's not a big deal. It ain't the first time you was wrong, and it probably ain't gonna be the last. And that's for you and everybody. I don't get it. Saul's mental state has been deteriorated for years. So what happened mentally is the collapse of he had a tormented mind, paranoia. He was insecure. He had fear. He had torment. He had confusion. He had instability. This is what this looks like. So a lot of times when people are doing these things, paranoia, somebody's bothering you. Nobody's bothering you. You probably the one bothering somebody else. But instead of you seeing it that way, you see it as they're bothering you. They're not bothering you. They're over there living their life. You are bothering them with the foolishness and shenanigans. David wasn't doing nothing to him. He was chasing David down. David was over there living his life trying to do what he doing. Emotional layer, grief, loss, and tragedy. Saul dies in despair. He dies alone, afraid, wounded, hopeless, disconnected from God. God would have taken him back at any time. He would have still had to have the consequences of his actions, but it may not have been as hard if he had just stopped repenting. Jonathan's death is heartbreaking. Jonathan was righteous. He loved David and he was loyal to God. His death is the emotional tragedy of the chapter. It is because he did what was right, but he still suffered the consequences of what his father had done. And this is something we, as parents, as mothers, as fathers, it says a lot. It says a lot. Whether you were the child and it was done to you, whether you did it to the child, whether the child passes it on, this says a lot. When the men are not in the homes, they blame the women. Oh, how she raised the child. But the first thing was the man was not there, so she did the best she could. So now we are not going to start. We start at the head, the man. He's the lead. We start right there. Then we go into all this other stuff. Folks don't like that, but this is the way it is. And when the men are not in the house and they're all, running up and down and don't want to marry, want to have these children, chasing sex and those other things fall apart. We talk about everybody wants to be the leader and the head and the king and all of this and rule. And then now we're seeing the total opposite, where they want to be treated like a woman and they want to dress like women because they're pushing this stuff. And it's so pushed that it's becoming such that this is the way it should be. Or women should accept that in a man, or in order for her to have a man to have that and accept. No, not acceptable at all. So Israel grieves a failed king. The nation loses its leader, its army, its stability, its hope. This is national grief, of course, because at one point he was upright with the Lord. He was anointed. He was that. And even if someone else killed him, God would have a problem with it. Physically, the body fails. Saul is wounded by his archers. He's physically weakened. He's unable to fight. He's unable to escape. His physical collapse mirrors his spiritual collapse. So when you're looking at your body, a lot of times, if you have issues with your body physically, that is a sign to you, okay? Spiritually, there's stuff going on and all kind of other stuff could be going on. So we have to be paying attention. Financially, it was national loss. Israel loses. Everyone lost right here. Why? Because the soldiers, the territory, the resources, the stability, Saul's disobedience create economic collapse. And when you look at situations when the parents are not in the home working together, when the children are not there working together, when disobedience, when dysfunction ravages the family, this is what this looks like. It's devastation, it's loss. And a lot of times, most of the pressure is on who? The mother, usually. Now, you have some instances where the father is, and then it will fall on him alone, but this is what you see. And with the world we're living in today, like I was talking about the Willie Lynch letter, if you go back and listen and watch that one, you'll see how this was their design to have it just this way. They never wanted, especially black males, because they were strong, to be strong and powerful and male. They want them to be feminine and submissive because they don't want them to really rise up. And this is what this is all about. Natural and geographical layer, Mount Gilboa. Mount Gilboa becomes the place of Saul's fall, the place of Israel's defeat. It is a place of prophetic fulfillment. It is a geographical symbol of judgment. So this is what this looks like. So when we look at our kids on the street, when we look at them shooting each other up, when we look at the drugs being sold, them on drugs, them shaking their butts, them all of this stuff, the weaves, the this, the that, when we look at this as, how we grew up and the culture of music and all of this other stuff that's pumped out, okay, when we're, buying them things instead of teaching them things and all these type of things, this is what we get. And then the areas we live in is full of violence, it's full of, infestation of addictions, whether it's mental habits, folks is, having mental health issues a lot because of the drugs. They have own physical ailments, alcoholism, too much crack or whatever. Families decaying, falling apart. Not only that, the environment itself is one of what? Dirt, roaches, those are signs spiritually, infestations of death and decay. So when you're in places where there's a bunch of feces on the floor, urine in the, and people talking about the hood, that's a mentality. And I tell people, because even though, when I moved in this building, I'm like, this building was brand new, it was nice, and now they're just tearing it apart. It's the mind, it's the mental. They don't know how to be nowhere with something that's decent and actually take care of it. Why? It's their mental. Mentally, the capacity for that, all they know is dysfunction. And you can look and see that all people know is dysfunction because you see that that is what they're doing. Dysfunction. Who wants to move somewhere nice and tear it up? Who wants to move out of the hood and bring the hood to where they at? Meaning, ain't no shooting, ain't no this. Who wants to move there and do that? It's the mind. And when your mind is like that, you have to ask God to heal and help you with these things. Because if that's all you know, then that's all you're doing. You see what I'm saying? And you got to get out of that. So, cultural layer, Philistine humiliation. Philistines cut off Saul's head. They display his body, celebrate his fall, place his armor in the temple of Asherah. This is cultural humiliation. Now, this is what they do. And when we look at our culture and how they humiliate us, they cut off their heads, taking the men out the house. They display women's bodies all over the place, especially in the black culture. They celebrate our fall because they keep us there. They place the armor in the temple of Asherah. If they got us doing all this, with the music, whether we know it or not, sorcery, whether we thinking it or not, we're being sacrificed to them. This is culturally humiliation. And when we look at where we are as a people, especially black people, we can't get in and we participate in our own humiliation. They got us so brainwashed to thinking this is cool and this is okay when it's not okay and it's not cool. They sit back laughing because they created it for us to be this way so we can destroy ourselves and not even know and think that it's culture and it's this and this is what the design. If you go back and look at the making of the slave, I break it down totally for you. Please go back. I keep telling people when I'm not posted, look at, I have over 600 something videos on this page. If you go back and you start out from the first and come, you will see there's so much I have covered already. It's a lot of research that I have to do for this stuff. This is why I have to take my time sometimes, to put them out because I have to figure out what's what and, find stuff, to let you see that what is going on. So socially, this is the end of Saul's influence. Saul loses his army, he loses his sons, his authority, his respect, his legacy. His social collapse is complete. When you look at us in our world, this is what happened. We have no military. The man is outside of the house. There's no one to protect the women and the children. We're losing our sons by what? Same thing. Our authority is completely gone. They don't respect anybody. Our respect is gone. Our legacies are gone. Where do we see any of this? I mean, outside of shaking butts, popping bottles, what do we see really happening? Outside of, money, 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 are we teaching them better? Because if they have more nice clothes, but mentally, can they read? Emotionally, financially, can they build and grow? Can they lead households? Can they cook and clean? That's been lost. Can they have a family dynamic, even when it comes to being social, having relationships, having friends that's outside of online? In person, can they do that? Because a lot of it is taken away. Folks don't even date no more. When they call themselves trying to date somebody, they go online. They don't even do, in person anything anymore. Pay attention. This is why they're introducing these robot people that you would be with, marry. Disgusting. Family layer, the end of Saul's lineage. Saul's sons dies, meaning Jonathan, Abinadab, Malachi, Shua. His dynasty ends. His family suffers the consequences of his leadership. Pay attention to the leadership. The family suffers the consequences of the leadership. What type of leadership are we doing? Sometimes we lead too soft. Sometimes we lead too hard. We have to find a balance. We have to figure it out in between. You can't be leaning too far to the one side and too far. If you're too lenient, they do what they want to do. If you're too hard, then you lose them with the rules. It's like you got to have a mixture. Now, you're never going to completely, satisfy everybody. So you can forget about that. You do what you can and let God do the rest, because, no matter what you do with some people, it will never be enough anyway. You can grow up in the perfect household with the perfect parents, and they will still, because they have their own minds, and they're going to still do what they want to do. Now, government's away. The kingdom shifts. Saul's death creates a political vacuum. National instability, the need for new leadership, the opening for David's rise. This is governmental turning point. Now, when we look at these things, we can look at the broader spectrum of the government and what they're doing, and we already know they're pushing the same things. This is the cultural, social. They're pushing it because they make money off it, on every end, whether it's, the making money from the deaths, making money off the drugs that they bring over here, making money off all of these things that they're pushing. This is big business for them. So, of course, they don't mind. The only time they mind is when they got to help you do something. Other than that, long as, they don't mind. And we got to pay attention, because the kingdom has shifted. And a lot of times we end up relying on the government for stuff and they want you to be at their beck and call. They don't want you to get to rise too big, no. Because then they lose their control. So they allow you to do a little bit, and then that's it, unless you're doing, other things. Past, present, and future. And you can take that and you can put it in your family life, your business life, every aspect. Because there's always certain things, whether it's credit or whatever, paying 3 times the rent, certain things that they have in place. When it comes to the lending and what you got to put up and what you got to do, whether it's for business. Now, they'll give you money for schools, but they don't want to do it when it comes to businesses and other things just as nice, So we got to think about that, and how does that look in our lives, and why is that way? Past, present, and future. The past, Saul's past disobedience catches up with him, right? So the present, Israel suffers defeat and humiliation because of it. And future-wise, David's kingship begins, because that era had to die out in order for this one. And this is why we have to dive to the old selves. You can't be the same you and go different places doing different things, because that you in that new era is not going to work. It's just not. So you can't go in the office talking about what your name is, shouty, and expect them to give you money for. No, you got to go in there, whether it's the legal field, medical field. This is how they got it set up, where we have to, and these are barriers. And I talk about the people, places, and thing barriers. I talk about the age discrimination, the color, the gender, all of these things that they got in place. These are the systems and the kingdoms of the world, principality and powers that they have in place to keep you in this loop of still being a slave, whether we want to think about it, realize it or not. And it just changes form. It's a mental block. It's a physical block, whether it's work, whatever. It's just the way they have things in place. It was like this when we were born. Okay, we were born into it. Prophetic lay at the end of one era, the beginning of another. Saul's death is prophetic because it fulfills Samuel's words. It ends a rejected dynasty. It opens the door for David, which is a beautiful thing. It shifts spiritual authority. It transitions Israel into a new season. This is divine timing. Now, what that looks like for this new generation, because although our generation is going to be going, to the side, what does it look? Can we look at these children now and say that they can lead? And a lot of our generation didn't lead. They didn't lead well at all either. and the generation before that. So when we look at it and we compare it from then to now, it's just getting worse. Seem like instead of getting better, each generation is supposed to get better. But because the curses and all the stuff is getting what it says, they're getting more into, these wicked things, which is what it says in the Bible. Why? Because each generation is worse than the other. It's supposed to be better, but is more into sin than the last. So personal application, we're going to look at some things in our lives. Saul's fall represents the end of toxic leaderships, which we need to get rid of. If you're not going to come and do your job, if you're not going to, lead the household, move out the way, because you're holding up progress. And everyone else is suffering up underneath you because things are not getting done properly. This is what this looks like. Instability, of course. Confusion, spiritual disorder, natural disorder, of course. Our season is ending. This is what this looks like. Either you're going to do what you need to do, whether it's in your house as a parent, as a spouse, on your job, in your, business, whatever, or you're going to move out the way. Because if you're more of a hindrance and everyone is suffering under you and going to suffer by your hands, then why are you there? Either you're going to be there to help as a leader, that's what you're supposed to be doing, to make things better. If not, then you need to step aside. God is removing what blocks your elevation. Saul stood between David and destiny. God removes him. Anything standing between you and your next season is being removed. This is what this will look like. Not everything that dies is actually a loss. Jonathan's death was tragic. Yes, it was. Saul's death was necessary. Some endings in our lives are painful, but they are purposeful. We're entering into our David season. Saul's fall is David's rise. Our past collapse is our future elevation. We have to die to the old self in order for the new self to live. You can't move forward if you don't do that. The old you, the way you think, the way you operate has to die out in order for the new you to emerge, in order for the new you to move and operate in the new season. That's why I say as a child, you acted like a child. If you're not growing, then something's wrong. God is closing the chapter on environments that used to harm, whether it's the environment, whether it's people, places, and things. Because remember, this is what this is about. Mount Gilboa is, can be any season in your life as far as environments that harm, whether it's, relationships, whether it's your job, whether it's, it could be any people, place, or thing. So it is a place of pain, instability, and warfare. That's what that is. But your Judah is coming. That means that season will eventually fail. It will fall. We don't know how long. This is where the impatience and all that other stuff get in the way. But we see how long David had to battle and wait before he, I'm quite sure, got to the throne. Meaning all of that time of battling, all of that time of, waiting. Although he knew he was king, knew he was going to be king, he had to wait and battle it out this whole time. And he waited, and he waited with a lot of, I seen him, get hurt a few times, but, and we're going to talk about that, the impatience and the negative thinking in order to keep us from being in those ways. Now, the summary of this, for the most part, 1 Samuel 31 is the story of disobedience maturing. So it got worse instead of getting better. Rebellion ripens, judgment manifesting, leadership collapsing, dynasty ending, prophecy fulfilling, and destiny shifting. Saul dies, Jonathan dies, Israel falls, but David's reign begins. So our Saul season will be ending and our David season will be beginning. So now I wanted to look at the impatience, the way it affects the consequences, negative thinking, attitudes while waiting, anger, restlessness, bitterness, fatigue, angry with yourself, angry with God, angry with the world. Thinking sometimes that we think God's punishing us or he hates us every time something's going on. And the promises and the pros and the cons. So we're going to look at it. And so Saul is the biblical picture of what happens when waiting goes wrong. David is the picture of what waiting look like. David is a picture of what happens when waiting matures you, or what it looks like to wait properly. So now we're going to break it down. Core takeaway here, Saul's downfall is the result of his impatience. It is the result of his disobedience, his negative attitudes, him not wanting to wait, him taking matters into his own hands. David's rise is the result of his patience, of his discipline, his emotional regulation. This is what this is about. You got that mental and emotional, the trust during the wait. So waiting is not neutral. It shapes you or it destroys you. It depends on your attitude. And a lot of times, even, when we're younger and we're thinking about, our lives and what we're going to do, and we see, going to college, doing this, doing that, doing certain things, we don't want to do them. But it's best that we do them in our younger years and get them out the way, because then our lives will be much better. But if we don't sacrifice the partying and the hanging out and the drinking and the this and the that, then we won't. If we go towards that, our lives are going to look so much, different when we get older. Why? Because we would have partied while we're young, and now we got to just start getting our lives together in our older age. And this is why I tell people, especially young people, do it while you're young. Why? Because your older years, when you're ready to chill, sit down, I'm just saying this because a lot of people don't understand that you're going to have to sacrifice that. And even now, if you see your life is going in certain areas, this is maybe the reason why, the choices you made. And being impatient because you think going to school is not going to take too long. Yes, but either you're going to do it now or you're going to do 10, 15 years, 2 years of playing and 15 years. And then by the time you get ready to do it, it'll be 10, 15 years later doing the same old thing. So now, impatience, the root of Saul's downfall. Saul's impatience shows up repeatedly. He offered sacrifices instead of waiting for Samuel. That was the first thing he did. He was not supposed to do that. Remember, he was a warrior. He was not a priest. He went into positions and areas he shouldn't have went into. That wasn't his role that God gave him. So he rushed the decision. He acted out of fear. He refused to wait for God's timing. He wanted quick answers. He wanted quick victories, and he wanted quick solutions. And a lot of times when we get the fast and the quick, that be the problem. That be the number one thing I always say when they're trying to get you to do something. Oh, hurry up because quick decisions usually are the worst ones. That's what the scamming, scheming, all that is. Impatience, disobedience, consequences, collapse. Impatience is not a small flaw. It is a destiny killer. So we got to pay attention. Consequences of impatience. Saul impatience produced what? Spiritual consequences. God's silence, his loss of anointing, his loss of prophetic guidance, his loss of divine protection. So this is what happens, and this is what it'll look like in our lives. Emotional consequences, anxiety, insecurity, paranoia, fear, and torment. Pay attention. Mentally, the consequences are confusion, instability, irrational decisions. We have to pay attention because this is so important. Physically, the consequences of disobedience is exhaustion, collapse, and suicide. This is what this looks like. I myself know because crashing and burning, yes, I have done it several times. Family consequences, Jonathan's death, his son's death, his lineage ending. National consequences, Israel's defeat, loss of territory, and humiliation. Impatience is very expensive. It is. So either you're going to wait and suffer then, or you're going to wait later if you don't wait and things go totally wrong. Negative attitude while waiting. Saul's internal decay. Saul's waiting season produced anger. He became angry at David, at God, at himself. And we will see this in our own lives. Restlessness. He could not sit still. He chased David instead of seeking God. This could look like insomnia as well. Bitterness. He became bitter towards David, Samuel, God, and his own destiny. We could see this as well. This is like really self-sabotage. I see so much self-sabotage in this. Fatigue, emotional fatigue turned into spiritual fatigue. Spiritual fatigue turned into mental fatigue. And mental fatigue turned into physical collapse. This is what this looks like. Being angry at God, Saul believed God abandoned him, but Saul abandoned God first. And a lot of times we got to think about that as well, because we think even in our own selves, in our own lives, people abandon us. They may have. We may have abandoned them. Think about God abandoned. Maybe God abandoned us. Maybe we abandoned God. Angry at the world, he blamed everyone except himself. And we do this from time to time as well. We get angry about a lot of things that go on. And it's a lot of times it's things we cannot change or have no, actual, control over. We got to be careful, fighting the battles we need to fight and not the ones we don't, and knowing which ones to accept and which ones not. This is what this is about. Thinking God hates him, this is the lies of spiritual torment. And a lot of times we don't realize this, but this happens a lot when people go through a lot of life and they feel like, God hates them and he just doesn't love them and so much. And don't get me wrong, because I have been there. I'm quite sure I am not the only one that have been there and thought like this at times. Like, God couldn't possibly love me because with all the stuff I go through, how could he? But this is, as we see, it is spiritual torment. So thinking God is punishing him, Saul confused consequences with punishment, and sometimes that's what we do. Sometimes it is not punishment. Like I said before, sometimes it could be something passed down generationally. Sometimes it's just something we got to deal with because God is trying to test us and show us. Maybe that's part of our assignment. So we can't think of it as one thing or the other. It could be different things going on. We got to figure it out. We got to look at it. We got to ask God and move from there. God wasn't punishing Saul. Saul was experiencing the fruit of his own decisions. And a lot of times that is the case as well. Long waiting. The difference between Saul and David. Saul waited poorly. His waiting produced fear, jealousy, insecurity, anger, bitterness, rebellion, and disobedience. So this is what this was look like when we wait poorly. David waited well. His waiting produced humility, strength, discipline, emotional maturity, spiritual depth, leadership capacity. Waiting reveals who you are. Waiting shapes who you become. Why? This will look like when everyone else is doing well and you're trying, you're striving, when nothing's working in your life and you're still going. This could be what this look like. So I don't know who this may be for because it was for me as well. This may be what this look like when you wait well. Because a lot of times, folks will be like, oh, well, I got this and they're doing this and they really look at your life and they're like, oh, well, she ain't got nothing going on. He ain't got nothing much going on. And it's not that. You're just waiting your turn. You're in the process. You know what God told you. You're just waiting. So, pros and cons of God's promises. This is deep. Pros of God's promises, they anchor you. They give you direction. They give you hope. They build faith. They shape identity. They prepare you for destiny. They attract divine protection and they create spiritual alignment. So these is what the pros of God's promises look like. Okay? So we got to look at this. And this is where we need to keep our focus on. Because sometimes in the wait, when you wait 20, 30, 40 years, I promise you, you will go through some things. You're not going to just always be positive about it. I'm not going to sit here and say I was, and I'm quite sure. Now, the cons of God's promises, and this is the human side. They require waiting. Waiting exposes impatience. Waiting exposes wounds. This might be stuff we got to heal from. It might be the reason why you haven't gotten there yet. There's still some unfinished business that will pop up in your life that God is trying to get out. Waiting exposes trauma as well. So the wounds, the trauma. Waiting exposes fear. Waiting exposes character flaws. Waiting exposes negative attitudes. Waiting exposes emotional instabilities. Waiting exposes spiritual maturity. And waiting exposes who you really are. So it can expose immaturity spiritually or, vice versa. Your mental, emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual, it will all come out in these seasons because you're going to see yourself being tested to the limit. God's promises are perfect, but the process is painful. Saul could not handle the process. This is what they talk about, the crushing. Okay? When you're being crushed, you're being processed. You cannot remain a grape and become wine. You have to be crushed. So, Saul could not handle the process. David grew through the process. And a lot of people think that they can handle you, your anointing, your calling. They think they want it until they have to go through the crushing process that you have to go through. They don't understand the pain, the embarrassment, the humiliation, all of the things. See, they want the good side of what you have, but they never want the opposite side of what you go through to get it and have it and maintain it. This is what they don't want. They don't see you crying and all of the stuff that goes on with your life in the back end. They don't see that part. They don't know that part. And this is why I said I wanted to start talking about these things so that people know and understand that this is really, and you know what? I'm going to share something at the end. How this shows up in 1 Samuel 31. Saul's death is the final result, one of impatience, negative attitudes, anger, bitterness, fatigue, spiritual drift, emotional collapse, mental instability, disobedience, and refusal to wait, refusal to trust, because we got to wait and trust God and obey. A lot of times that can be yes. And I'm going to tell you why, because we look at God like our natural parents a lot of times, and because he's not like them, he's different. Now, I use a lot of similes sometimes to, just kind of, but in all actuality, God is not like our parents because he is God. So although I use that from time to time, that's different because as human parents, we are flawed, but God is not. So pay attention to that. Don't let it go over your head. Saul died long before he fell on his sword. This is like relationships ended a long time ago. We just didn't pay it no mind. Whatever is going on, it been over. All of these issues and problems and dysfunction, we just never actually cut it off and let it die. He died spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, financially. But in chapter 31, it simply physically manifested. It finally manifested. Because when people, places, and things are long gone from you and it's over, they've been gone. They've been planning exit strategies for a long time. It's just that you didn't know. And finally, one day they up and they leave. No, they've been planning that. It was some stuff going on a long time before that even happened. And whether you paid it any mind, whatever was going on in the relationship, this is how it ended up getting there. And a lot of times there'd be a lot of stuff that was swept under the rug, wasn't said, wasn't spoken about, was done and ignored, or, nothing was done. The elephants in the room, they were just sitting there. And this is how it gets to that point. Now, when our waiting season is long, because this is where it gets real, okay? But it's shaping us, it's not destroying us. Now, sometimes we're in David type waiting seasons, sometimes we're in Saul. It depends. Because we're gonna have to collapse or die in some seasons, to become whatever we're gonna come. Before we become David, we got to be Saul. Not to say it like that, but whatever's there, we have to die it out. Now, our patience is understandable, but it's not faded. We've been tired, overwhelmed, we've been discouraged, we've been traumatized, we've been frustrated, we've been misunderstood. Now, but unlike Saul, we got to keep returning to God, and we got to keep, I tell people, depending on the day, sometimes I'm much better than I used to be. So, but I'm not where I want to be yet. Or not what God wants me to be. Now, negative emotions are not rebellion. They're just exhaustion. God is not angry with me. God is not punishing me. God does not hate us. We are tired, not disobedient. We have to pay attention to this. And sometimes we are. Sometimes God is trying to show us in these areas of things we need to change. It may not be the big ones like the smoking and the drinking and the party. It may be the forgiveness and the, whatever else that's there. The getting rid of the anger, the bitterness, or whatever, or doing something, whatever it may be. Our anger is a sign of pressure. It is not spiritual failure. David got angry too. David got discouraged too. He cried until he had no strength left. That was a sorrow. But David kept turning back to God. So this is what we need to be doing. Still, regardless, turn back to God. Now, when it gets to bitterness or whatever, if this is where we're at, our bitterness is healing, it's not hardening. We don't want to be hardening our hearts. We want to be softening them. Because if not, God will soften them through the heartache and pain of certain things we're going to go through. This is how this looks. Now, our processing pain, we want to process it and not become like Saul, not become angry and bitter. This is how this is going to look. But to process it in understanding and in waiting, and we cry it out and do whatever we need to do, and we just wait on God and moving forward. Our fatigue is real, but God is strengthening us. Remember, we are not collapsing, we are transitioning. He's when we are weak, he's strong. A lot of people ask how you get through these. It's not me, because if it was me, I would have been gone a long time ago. It is him that is continuing to keep his hand and strengthen me, because I promise you, giving up, not wanting to be bothered would have happened a long time ago, baby. I promise you with all I done been through, honey. Child, please. Now, our long waiting period will be producing David level maturity and capabilities. Because remember, when you're becoming a leader, you're going to be doing whatever you're going to be doing. Whatever that may be, it's going to come with more responsibility. So you have to be able to handle the responsibility on that level. So much is given, much is required. So it's going to be bigger devils, more, finances, situation, more everything. And this is what this is going to look like. So this is why the preparation is necessary. So you can carry and hold the weight. Remember, it's going to be a new foundation. Everything's built on the foundation. This is why being a man, being a leader is hard, because everything is on top of them, literally. And that's why we get overwhelmed, fatigued, and tired. So we're becoming emotionally disciplined, spiritually intelligent, mentally resilient, leadership ready, and destiny shaped. This is what the process of God is doing. God's promises over our life are still active. Our relocation, or if that's what you want to do, our peace, whether it's a new job, whether it's a new town, our peace, our stability, our calling, our platform, our healing, our elevation, they are all delayed. They're not denied. So we just have to keep that in mind. Find a summary and takeaway. 1 Samuel 31 is a story of what happens when impatient and negative attitudes plus disobedience turns into maturing, meaning Saul's fall is a result of his impatience, his anger, his bitterness, his relentless restlessness, fatigue, his spiritual drift, his emotional collapse, his mental instability, his long waiting without trust, or completely trusting and giving to God. And sometimes we give it and we take it back, so we got to pay attention to that too. David's rise is the result of patience, discipline, emotional regulation, spiritual alignment, trust during the waiting. Remember that, and humility and obedience. I don't know. Our stories can mimic or mirror David's. Sometimes Saul's. Our waiting is shaping us. Our emotions are valid. Our fatigue is real. Our hope is deferred, but it's not dead. So, and our promise is alive, and our elevation is near. So we have to remember that. So God's promise is his promise. We got to just wait on it. We got to ask him to give us the strength to wait and wait properly. Sometimes that means standing still, letting him do the work in the areas, and then you doing what you need to do in your areas. And that's how that looks. Because waiting, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not doing anything at all. It just means that you're letting God take the wheel. He's taking, he's in the driver's seat and you're in the back seat, and you're just kind of waiting for him to tell you which way to go or what to do, where he's dropping you off at. Now, with that being said, a couple things happened to me over the week. Ooh, my patience, Lord Jesus. So, Friday morning, I was getting off work. My dad hits me up because my car is with him, and he tells me that I don't drive it. I'm, in another part of the city, and his car is messed up. So I let him drive mine. And so someone busted my windows out. 2 of my windows on my car. Now, it's not the first time that this has happened, especially in New York, but it's just the point. So I'm upset. So we got to go through all this with police reports, and the people are on camera. So I don't know who did it, but they are on camera, and I am pressing charges, and I should, because you can't go around vandalizing people's stuff. And if you do, then yeah, you need to pay for it, and there's justice and whatever else needs to be done. You don't just tear up people's stuff. And so that hit me. So that had me upset. That was on Friday morning. So then we ran around and did all of that, and I'm still waiting on, this other stuff. I had a couple of doctor's appointments. I had to go see about that. So then I washed my clothes the other day, and my basket was sitting there. I was waiting for the people to come, but it was for a while. Ooh, honey, somebody stole a whole heap of my clothes. Dirty clothes, mind you, out the hamper. I'm sitting here like, who would want to steal someone else's dirty clothes? Makes no sense. So, and it's like stuff like this. Oh, I'm just giving out a rundown. It's like, it's so, it's sad to say it, but stuff like this, whether it's this and particularly other stuff like it, happens to me a lot. And not to say a lot, but it just does. And it irks me and it annoys me. It really does. And, I used to tell the story of Liberty Snickets, and stuff consistently, and people say, oh, it's just you. No, it's not just me, because I'm over here just like, I'm minding my business, not bothering them. I'm just like, what is all of this about? But I digress. It is what it is. It upsets me. It makes me so, at times, I be so upset, so bent out of shape. And then I go back to work. So now I got to buy like some of my shirts for work, like the black and the different ones, because they stole a bunch of that stuff, my underwear. I'm like, who would want towels, something? I don't know. Dirty clothes. They're not even clean. They're just sitting there waiting. So anyway. So then I get to work, and one of my favorites, and I'm really upset. I'm really kind of hurt by this. It's a loss. One of the clients, I don't know if you guys ever see me tell someone, he used to come downstairs. His name was Anthony. He would come downstairs, and he would always come talk to me at night when I would be at work. And so sometimes I'd be doing my videos, and I'm like, I can't talk to you right now. I don't know if y'all ever heard me say that. That was him. He would come down. Now, Anthony, he was 2 years older than me, so he's about 48. And he did have, issues with mental health and different things. But, oh my God, I am going to miss him. He died over the weekend. And I was so upset when I got back to work, because I had just seen him that night, and he was down there talking to me as usual. And so when I went back to work Monday night, I found out he was gone, and it really hurt me. It really disturbed me. He's 2 years older than me. He was black, and he had his issues, but we would always sit there. We would talk about a lot of different things, and so I am so gonna miss him. And then his family, and the way it happened, because they didn't find him. I think he was already upstairs gone about a day or two, and I wasn't there. I would have known something was wrong, because normally he comes down at night when I come in. He knows my like different ones he talked to on different shifts. So he'll talk to who this one, he'll talk to that one. So when we're switching out, he comes down for whoever he knows is coming. So, but I am so gonna miss him. The talks we had all night, and he would get out. He would act up sometimes, but for the most part, I am so gonna miss him. And I hate the way he left, and it was so fast, and it was so sudden, and it really. Oh, it just bothered me so. It bothered me so. So I've been thinking about, I was like, Lord, and for him to have gone and just, the way it all happened, I don't want to discuss it too much, and I was just like, dang, my buddy is gone. So we're going to try to do a little memorial or something. And I think something with the funds, with the family, I don't know, but we're going to try to do a little something, us, the ones that were really kind of close to him there, because he was like a staple there. He would be downstairs, and, I'm really going to miss him. I went in looking for him that night. That was oh my God, I went in. I was like, he going to be downstairs in a few minutes. I knew he was going to come. I'm like, he's coming. And then when I was like checking the building, and then I happened to go into the day room, and then I see the little balloons and the little thing they had for him with his picture. And I'm like, what? I didn't even, in loving memory, he died. I said, what the heck happened? I just left here on Friday. I told him I was going to see him that night, and I didn't come back to work that night. I couldn't because of the situation with the car. So I am so hurt. I didn't even get to say goodbye to my friend. I was like, oh my God. So God be with his family. And, that was just, outside of the car and the stuff being stolen, but that kind of, So this is what my couple of days was, and I had to get my little self together, because it was just like, and it's still, because I'm going to miss him coming down every day. And I'm even last night, his presence being there, coming and talking to me every night, it's just like, I'm going to have a hard time getting over that. I really, really am. It's going to be hard for me not to see him every day. So I, prayers for him and his family. Really, really and truthfully, he is going to be missed so much. And to a lot of people, he was just a nobody. He was, a para, and he voices and stuff. But he was, to regular people, he was a nobody. But to the people that knew him and cared about him, he was really, somebody. He would come and talk to us, and he would have his moments. But so with that being said, I just want us to look at things, and I would bring him food sometimes. He would eat my food. He loved my food. And I was like, you know what? I just was like, so this is going to be hard. And I'll bring him clothes sometimes. So this is going to be hard. So y'all keep me in prayer, and his family as well, the Abbott family. And I hope that they're going to be able to bury him or do something, because I think they have issues with the funds. And I hate that as well. But other than that, life is short. I've been seeing a lot of people either sick or dying this week. And to them, it's just been like the past couple of weeks, it's been back to back to back. I don't even want to go online and look. It's like, oh my goodness. And my heart goes out to all the people, all the families. It just gets to me so much sometimes. And sometimes I have to step back. They wanted me to do case management and all. I don't know if I could do it. And it's not to say I'm a person that has a heart, so burnout would be the issue for me, because and I don't want that to be that. So God has to really help me with that, because I don't mind assisting other people with their needs, but sometimes when you are a giver, you have to know when and how, so because it will burn you out. Because a lot of people in these fields, when they're dealing with people, they do not have a heart for the people. And when they don't, you can tell. They just don't care. The people look anyway. It's just, I'm not that type of a person. I don't want you smelling. I don't want you to be not bathed. I don't want you to be not taken care of. I don't, those things bother me. So it's like they irritate me. It's something in my spirit and my soul. It just bothers me. And I can't do that for everybody. I'm not God. I can't. And I'm a fix-it person. And that's another thing. I can't just be fixing people and fixing their lives. That's no. So, but keep me in your prayers, people. And we're looking at this. Like I said, we're looking at the weights, because we're all waiting for something or another in our lives. I don't know what that looks like for you. It could be family, it could be a husband, it could be a raise, it could be a business, a promotion, it could be whatever. A healing. We're all waiting on something. So just wanted to share this. So impatience and negativity, we got to hear how to wait, pros and cons, and what to do. So I love you guys. Be blessed in Jesus' name. I thank you so much for all the new subscribers. For those who are coming in, welcome to the family. Please do like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I want the messages to get out to the people, who may need them. And to look at their lives, and to God be the glory. It's not about me. It's just about, putting out whatever it is that I could to help other people. And if it is a help to you, then let God get the glory. Bruised Not Broken. Like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. I think my Cash App is in the bio link, I think, if you go up on the... But other than that, God is my provider. And this is what it is. So this is the life. It's like these little annoying irritants, this is what it be. So my life is just not what people think it is. Things like that happen a lot. I'm not even going to say it like that, but it just be, oh. And it irritates my soul sometimes. But it's just a part of living. It's a part of life, and you just got to get through it and move through it and not let it get to us. And whatever it is, God is promising us to wait and to wait, properly. We do have our times when things is, and a lot of times when people lose people, this is be the thing that crushes them. When people lose people, especially people that are close to them, that could be the point to where they hate God and all this, and their mind is gone. So we have to be very careful. Or losing their job, losing their health. It could be different things, so we have to be careful. But I love you guys. Bruised and Not Broken. Be blessed. Like, share, comment to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel, and be blessed in Jesus' name. Until the next video.